What is up, guys and girls? Hurricane Liz here, and in this video I not only cover the topic of fear specifically for entrepreneurs, I will end fear forever with this simple magic trick that I'm going to teach you at the end of this video, but I'm also going to tell you about how I got these scratches and a heck of a lot more. And let's just get it out of there. How did I get these scratches? Well, that's because my cat was facing the topic at hand right now, which is fear. She was afraid to go to the vet. So how do you avoid fear in business? How do you avoid fear if you're a brand new entrepreneur? And how do you avoid fear if you're a current entrepreneur who's doing really well, but sometimes gets stuck in little situations? Well, that's going to be what I'm going to answer here in this video and a heck of a lot more. So I'm super fired up for this video. I hope you're fired up. My cat is definitely not fired up. She needs to get calmed the F down. But other than that, let's go and do this. All right, so before I give you the magic trick to get rid of fear forever, let's talk about fear in general, particularly among entrepreneurs, as this is a common problem when somebody first gets started online and selling online and or even picking a business to work with. And then sometimes in our path or in our career, when we're already doing these things, we can get faced with this just because something could happen in our lives. It dramatically impacts it. But the tactic that I show you will get you past this no matter what area of your life you're in. So let's first talk about how these situations arise and what the common situations are. And then I'll talk about some of my more personal situations, and then we'll jump into the topic at hand. So a common situation, particularly among new entrepreneurs where they're really, really afraid, is when they first start out picking out a business. In some cases, they're overloaded with a ton of different ideas, or they start something and then they're overloaded with a ton of information and they really get to the point where they're confused and just don't know where to go. Now, with that being said, what I usually recommend to get past that, and this is still not the magic trick that I will reveal at the end, but the tactic that I recommend to get past that initial fear is to find a mentor. Make sure it is the right mentor. Make sure it's somebody that you know is legitimate, somebody that you want to follow, and somebody that knows their shit. And the most important thing is, if you've ever seen the movie Karate Kid, then you'll know that Miyagi told Daniel, wax on, wax off. And while Daniel didn't understand what it was for at the time and even fought him on listening to that premise, at the end of the day, the reason that Miyagi had Daniel waxing on and waxing off is because of the fact it was teaching him how to block. And while Daniel couldn't understand that because he was the student, it's always important that when you find the right mentor, you listen to exactly what they tell you to do. And despite the fact that you sometimes don't want to do that thing or it doesn't make sense to you, it's still important to listen to them and still do it, even though you just don't know. And that's part of finding a mentor and making sure you're following the right person. But that's usually the one thing that does help you when you first start. And the last tip that I wanted to give with that is, a lot of times when we start, we're afraid to spend the money or put the money into something because we don't know if it's going to pay off. Well, in order to combat that, think of it as you going to college. When you first, if you did go to college, you didn't necessarily know what was going to happen at the end of college. You didn't know if you were going to finish college, but yet you were still willing to pay money as well as pay time, which is more valuable than that money, in order to learn something and then hope that it pays off in the end with you getting a job, right? Some job you get at the end of that, most people hate their jobs. So as a result, look at this brand new venture that you're starting as your college tuition and you having to pay a certain amount of money in order to learn the venture. Sure, you could drop a lot of money on learning the venture, but at the end of the day, as long as you learn new lessons from that venture, at some point, if you persist, you will become successful as long as you don't give up. Now let's talk about the second situation that entrepreneurs usually face fear in. And we're not going to talk about any type of fear that you face when you're trying to do something like climb a mountain or something like that. We're specifically going to be talking about business. And this particular situation happens when you already have an existing business and something happens that you just don't know how to get through. And I will share an example with you guys and girls of something that I faced in that particular situation, but you're really unsure about what's going on right now in your business as well as what the future holds. And things like this can often even lead you to lose sleep and have extreme amount of stress in you, and at the end of the day, that affects your health in the long run. So you really want to get a grasp on this, and I will talk about some remedies for that at the end of this, but this is a situation that many entrepreneurs that are already having success or have had success face many times in their lives, and sometimes that situation can get too stressful. In order to understand some of these situations, I'm going to share with you a couple of my personal situations that have happened in the past that relate to this and this only. Now, as a noob, when I first started, it was often difficult for me to decide exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't look at things the way I referred to them earlier as college tuition, and I really didn't use the special trick that I'm going to show you at the end of this video to assess anything. So it was often difficult for me to find that business and stick with it. And then I was all about not paying mentors. I thought I could do everything myself and figure it out myself just by either reading or researching. And I never really wanted to plunk down a large amount of cash on anyone because I wasn't sure what I was going to get at the end of the day. And boy, that was a huge time waster, as it took me a lot longer to find success than usual people do at certain businesses. A couple examples are, I really had no idea about automation. I had no idea about outsourcing. I was so stuck on this control thing where I had to do everything, not realizing I could outsource things very cheaply overseas and not have to do the monotonous tasks of day-to-day work myself, which now looking back at it is really stupid because I could have been much further in my career much sooner. So I had to learn the ropes the hard way. And the other thing is, since I didn't have a mentor, again, I had to learn the ropes the hard way. It was at some point later on in my career that I realized I could not only outsource, but also pay people for information. And when I started to do that, things accelerated quickly. And I found that no matter how desperate the situation was, I could always get a fresh start because not only did I have a good network behind me, but I also had a lot of people in my Rolodex. So my first particular example was when I first started, I had a business partner that we were making decent money. It was at least paying the bills. And at some point we decided to end the partnership altogether. We really had nothing in writing. We didn't even have an LLC because I was just that green to business. And they ended up taking a bunch of inventory, promising to sell it and pay me back money, and pretty much left me with zero. So I was left with no money, didn't really realize anything, and had to start all over again. And I had to take a loan from my mom to actually start over again. Thankfully, I had been doing a side hustle, and that really helped me start a second business. And the second situation that I'm going to share with you is when I lost all my money playing poker. And while people might say, well, like, you shouldn't do that, Liz, you were a total degen. And I didn't lose it because I was playing at the tables. I lost it because the US DOJ shut down all poker sites, and I had a lot of money in those poker sites because I was playing very high limits. And as a result, those poker sites froze all the money, and a lot of them declared a bankruptcy. So that pretty much eliminated a lot of my cash reserves, and it eliminated a job that was earning me several hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars per year playing poker. And that was catastrophic. I had to start from scratch. I was stuck with a big house, big cars, and you can't imagine what that did to me very quickly. So I had to recover from that. And the third time that that's happened to me, and it's actually happened many more times than that, but I don't want to bore you guys with all these details. But the third time is recently when I took an entire year off from working because of the death of my mom. And I also got hit with a lawsuit from one of my primary income earners, which was one of my Amazon businesses. And I'm still recovering from that. I'm still working towards that. I had to start from scratch, not knowing what to do next, and pretty much had to learn all new businesses and had to find new mentors in order to learn these. So I've been in the similar situations just like you are. So no matter what you're feeling at this very moment, I too can relate to what you're feeling. Now let's talk about those solutions, including that magic trick to what will help you eliminate this and how I recover so quickly no matter what happens. So the first thing that has always helped my mental health no matter what happens, and this is especially true of my anxiety, which yes, just like other people get anxiety, I suffer from anxiety too. But the first thing is always exercise. Exercising on at least every other day has almost eliminated my anxiety, and while I still feel anxious at sometimes, it's really helped me tremendously, and that's why I do it no matter what. And although I like to eat a lot, I still exercise as much as I can. Now, the second tactic to get rid of this is writing out your feelings or journaling. Specifically, writing out the things that you're grateful for, as well as realizing that while being in this world, there are certain people that need you, and understanding what your reason why is. Understanding that you are very vital in other people's life is really important for your mental health, and it what keeps you going every single day. Now, the third tactic is to socialize with people with similar goals. And I'm talking about people that want to do the same. And I'm not talking about hanging out with your Uncle Hank who's always hitting the bar and he's a fun guy to have really great time with. I'm talking about hanging out with people that are wanting to start a business, or hanging out with people that own businesses and are in different industries. I do that almost on a daily basis. And the reason for that is obviously building a good network and just have a good set of friends that know and can relate to very similar situations that they potentially have faced and that you're going through. And the fifth tactic is journaling your progress and trying to accomplish at least 3 things that will get you in the right direction in your business on a day-to-day basis. I often journal my progress, and I find that when I don't, I will stop doing these 3 things, and then I really won't get anywhere. So it's really important to do that on a daily basis. And now I get to the magic tactic and the magic trick that I've been talking about this entire video. And most of you are probably thinking like, why didn't you just cover this in the beginning? And that's because I really wanted you to listen to the rest so you could understand that I too have been there, and I too face these challenges on a day-to-day basis. And that tactic is ask yourself this simple question and write out the answer and think about this. That question is, no matter what fear you face, ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? And really think about that. What's the worst that could happen if you start a brand new business? Will you die if you do? I mean, chances are, as long as you're not mountain climbing without ropes or anything like that, you will not die. And even then, you probably still will not die if you're an expert climber. And a lot of people don't ever think about it like that. And they don't really think about what's the worst that could happen. They're so worried about, oh my God, what happens if I call my brand this? And then I want to call it something else later. I'm afraid, I don't know what to pick. So they never pick anything. And that's a very common problem against entrepreneurs, is facing really simple things that don't really or aren't really going to make a difference in the long run. So again, what is the worst thing that could happen to you? What's the worst thing that could happen to you? For example, myself, if I'm in a lawsuit right now and I lose and I have to pay a bunch of money, I just have to pay a bunch of money. But because of the fact that I've built this network, a lot of skills, and I'm building several different business assets, then it's really not going to matter, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to die from that. As long as I don't allow it to get my stress levels really high and my anxiety really high, then my health should be pretty darn good, right? So that is the magic trick. Again, I hope it was worth it, and I hope you guys take that simple lesson from this video and apply it to whatever fearful situation you face, as it's what I think to myself every single day, and it gets me through the toughest hurdles that there are both in business and in life. So let me know your questions and comments below. I always personally answer them, and I'll see you guys in the next video.